Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Good morning. I am echoing to myself. I'm hoping you guys can hear me. Tanisha says yes, and we can see your screen. Okay. So Jane and Matt, thank you for the great lead-in. I'm going to walk us through what exactly COA is doing with the recommendations that Scripps made, and also give some examples about how the scoring is going to work in the reports that you will get in the near future. I'm just going to go one by one through the recommendations. The first one was to work with consumers to refine, remove, or add items. And as Jane mentioned, we are doing focus groups this spring. Those are coming up very soon to speak with consumers directly to determine what questions ought to be asked in the survey and how they should be asked, and also make some decisions about the best way, the best answer choices to give them. So it's possible we may be moving away from the yes always, yes sometimes sort of approach. Tanisha, I just saw your notes of a bad echo. Is there something I need to do? It's clear now. The second recommendation was no reporting of domain and sub-sales scores. That has been done. We have removed those from our measurement and reporting. You will not see those anymore. The third recommendation was to focus on the yes always response, and I have to say I was excited that I am really happy with the decision to move in this direction. I think it works well. I think it's much more straightforward, very clear, easy to understand, and most importantly, it places the emphasis on the right thing. We want our clients to have the yes always experience with every service all the time and every component of the service. So in a sense, our new scoring approach reflects this idea that there really is a right answer to the questions on any client satisfaction survey, whether it's the Sassy or whether it's one you take when you buy a new car or go through a drive-thru. All sorts of customer satisfaction surveys are really aiming for that ideal experience, and so that's what we want to do too. So our new report focuses on the yes always response primarily. We won't stop reporting the other responses, but we're placing primary emphasis on the yes always response, and on the other end of the spectrum, we're also giving some attention to both of the no responses, and we've set benchmarks for both of those as well. I will say more about those two in just a moment when I talk more about scoring. Recommendations 4, 5, and 6. 4 is done. That's regarding setting benchmarks. We have done that, and I'll give you more details on those in just a moment. 5 and 6 are both planned or under consideration, and those are ongoing work. 5 is to more regularly look at possible sources of bias, particularly regarding client characteristics. But in-house, we also know the role of the care manager or whoever is administering the survey. is really important too, and so we are also monitoring those for possible sources of difference or bias. Number 6, we are looking at changing the eligibility criteria for Sassy surveys. One change there is to shorten the eligibility length of time from 3 months to 1, but we're also considering some additional changes in terms of frequency of surveying. As you know, right now, clients are only surveyed at their annual reassessment, but we're looking at possibly more frequent surveying, and also having an event-based survey, so that if we have, so that we're picking up things related to client transfers from one provider to another, particularly if the client is driving that transfer. Those are important things we feel we're missing right now, or could be missing by just doing it at the annual reassessment. And so we're looking at some different ways to make sure we're really capturing the full spectrum of client satisfaction and feedback. The last 2 recommendations are also have some action on them. Number 7 is to implement our quality improvement system. We've rolled that out to you. We rolled that out to you in December. We're calling that our PQMS, Provider Quality Management System. So we have put that in place. Amy and her team have done a fantastic job of that. And I have on my notes here that this one is done, but with modifications. And specifically what I mean there is that Amy and her team have committed to conducting quality action plans every 6 months rather than every quarter right now. And we are considering some changes, though, and this ties in with number 8 here. If we, I would say really when we move to the Sassy survey being fully electronic and automated, that will probably open up some possibilities for us to do faster turnaround, not only on reporting, but also in working directly with you to respond and act on any findings, negative or positive. So I think we have a lot of activity going on and a lot of change happening this year. As you can see, some of that's already happened and is really in active phases right now, and some of it is planned. But once it does go live, it will move fairly quickly. So buckle your seatbelts for the next year or so of client satisfaction work. I think we're going to see a lot of really positive changes coming. And we'll all reap the benefits of that. The faster turnaround on information in particular is something I'm very excited about, because I know we want it and we know you want it as well. That's a great sign, so we want to try to deliver on that as quickly and as well as we can. So I promised I would say a little bit more about scoring. I have 2 slides on this. One is just to walk you through conceptually what has been done, and then I'll also walk you through an example. You'll see this in the Sassy reports that are coming out soon. 5 points to be made here. One is that the scoring, again, centers on that yes always response. And from a mathematics perspective, what that means is we've taken the average proportion of questions on which clients gave the yes always response. So we're not counting the ones they didn't answer. We're only counting, you're not getting penalized for a non-response. We're only counting the ones that they gave an answer to and telling you the percentage of time, the percentage of questions on average your clients gave that desired response, that yes always response. Again, we think this is more meaningful. It's also much more straightforward. We sort of imagine this will be as you are sharing your results with staff, possibly with your boards. This makes your conversation a little easier to have, easier to explain, and most importantly, easier to act upon. Again, it emphasizes the desirable outcome for clients. And we're not ignoring the other questions. The no, hardly ever, and no, never responses are also monitored and benchmarked. And speaking of benchmarks, number 2, we have set those For home delivered meals, the Yes Always benchmark is set at 80%. For home care, the Always benchmark is a little higher at 85%. And for both services, the No benchmark is set at a maximum of 5%. So that one is a reverse benchmark in a sense. You want to say, for the 80 and 85, you want to be there or above, but you never want to be more than 5% in the No range. Because yes sometimes is neither desirable nor especially undesirable, we have not set a benchmark for it, and we will not be emphasizing that response. We really want the attention on the responses that tell you what you're doing really well and that also alert you to where there may be some serious concerns. 3, 4, and 5, all questions are scored. Now, you might remember that previously scoring did not include the question about whether the client would recommend their provider to family or friends. Now, that question is still important, and it is now, as it always has been, used to help validate the survey tool. But because of how we've changed the scoring method overall, it makes sense now to include that question in the score. Now, one thing that has not changed regarding the questions, but probably will change going forward, the questions remain unweighted. In other words, in scoring, all the questions are treated equally. Going forward, we're considering making some questions more important than others, so a heavier weight when it comes to scoring. Provider scores are not broken out by meal source anymore. What that means is that we are not focusing on whether you are a self-producer versus using a catering company. Again, as Jane and Matt pointed out, the statistical analysis found that this really was not a differentiator. So even when the same caterer supplied the meals, the scores were really driven by the client's overall experience with your agency, not with the meal source. And since this was one of their recommendations, we have acted immediately on that and dropped that distinction. And the last one here is that we've also dropped the domains or subscales. All right, an example. This is similar to what you can expect to see going forward. It may or may not look exactly like this, but I wanted to walk you through how you might see the data displayed. So what you're looking at here, and I've kind of blocked out, the provider names are along the left, so each provider gets their own row. And I'll walk you through, let me walk you through the second line there. I'll walk you through the first two. What you're looking at is if you follow from left to right, is you'd have the provider name on the left, the average percent of questions their clients answered with yes always. In this particular instance, that provider scored a perfect 100%. So on average, their clients answered every question with yes always. On average, if you keep reading over to the right, on average, their clients answered none of their questions with either of the no responses, and the same went for the sometimes response. That's fairly atypical to have such a perfect profile. The second and third lines are a little bit more typical. That second provider had on average their clients gave the yes always response 94% of the time, or to 94% of the questions. They had a 0, or actually it was a decimal point there, but it's under 1% for no, and 5% sometimes, and so forth. And then what you're seeing with the green, what you're seeing here with the green highlights in the background, that's where you want to be. So if you see green shading, that should direct your eye to say, I want my scores to fall in this green shaded area. So you can see most of the providers in this grouping are at or above that 85% mark. And all of them are under the 5% threshold for no. So what we're looking at here is really good news. We only have three providers in the network who fell below the 85%, and none who have major red flags for either of the no responses. So this is a nice profile to see. But when you go and look at your scores, what you want to train your eye to do is to see whether you're in the green or not. And then what you'll get as well is a good amount of detail about your scores over time. So you can look at your track record and trending, and you'll also get details by question. So you'll get a nice mix of summary information that shows you where you fall with regards to the rest of the network, but you'll also get a lot of detail about your own results over time by question and to some degree also by program. And that concludes my section. It looks like we have lots of good questions coming in here. So Tanisha, I'm going to turn this back over to you for Q&A.
Okay, just 1 second. We'll get the questions to everyone. Okay. The questions will show up in the chat box below, and then they'll be addressed by either Dr. Straker or Lori Hayes or Amy Ho if necessary. First question is the actual client always the person who answers all of these questions?
The answer to that is definitely yes. Tanisha, can everybody hear me, do you think?
I think so.
I'm echoing again. Yes, for the Sassy survey, and you'll find answers to this at the end of your Sassy reports. We have an FAQ section, and this is one of the most common questions we get, but there are no proxies for the Sassy survey. It has to be the client. The client has to speak for themselves, and there has to be no one else in the room, and no provider staff can be in their home at the time the survey is given. So there are lots of good rules to ensure the integrity of the process.
Okay, we'll go to the next question.
I'll take 2 and 3.
The next question is, will this webinar be on COA's website so we can view or listen on a later date?
It is our intent to put it on the website so that you do have that capability. This is Amy Ho.
And our next question is, can I get a copy of this PowerPoint?
And the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, our next question is a longer one. For the smaller providers, the issue of sample size is important. How will you guarantee that the client completes the Sassy survey on a quarterly basis? This has not happened in the past, thereby eliminating results for smaller providers.
I'll take that one. This is Lori again. I think this problem has been around for a long time. And some of the solutions we're considering have to do with technology to help make the process more conducive to doing surveys more frequently. So I think the first step there is to complete our plan to make the Sassy fully electronic. But the other thing we're thinking about doing, and Scripps will be testing this for us, is seeing whether the Sassy can be conducted by phone. We don't know how that will go, but that's the purpose of testing it. What that would do would open up the possibility that someone other than the care manager could do the survey with the client. And making it electronic makes it possible for us to get very fast turnaround time. We're also looking at maybe changing our rules regarding sample size. We do need some kind of guideline in place to protect the statistical integrity of the process. But if we can get more surveys coming in and it's electronic, one possibility there is that every time X number of surveys hit the system for your agency, you can go out online and look at your results. Something like that. So we are looking at ways to resolve this issue.
Okay, our next question. What type of training did care managers receive? If client was to switch providers prior to survey, is that being considered when compiling answers?
Care managers have to go through mandatory training to be trained as researchers to conduct the Sassy survey. It's a very specific training. Everyone goes through it when they start, and then every so often for refresher training. We don't record whether the client has switched providers recently, but what can happen is if they've had 2 providers for the same service in the past year, they can and often do complete 2 Sassy surveys, one for each agency.
Okay, we'll move to our next question. Why is the benchmark not the same for home delivered meals and home care?
There are some qualitative differences between those 2 services. We see a lot more variance in home delivered meal scores, and there's thought to be a lot more subjectivity from the client's perspective, because you're talking about something very fundamental as food. So taste in every definition of that word. Right, personal taste, the taste of the food. There's more variance there than we would expect to see in home care.
Okay, our next question. When will the new Sassy format be available to providers?
Do they mean the report or the survey?
It did not say.
The new way of reporting they should see within the next month.
Okay.
The new survey is on a longer time frame.
All right, we'll move to our next question. To clarify, the benchmark for home delivered meals is 80%.
Right. For home delivered meals, the yes always response should be there at least 80% of the time.
Okay. And we have one more question.
Let me add a little bit to that before we move off the benchmark question. Those will be looked at probably every 6 to 12 months to see if and when adjustments should be made. I expect eventually that 80% benchmark for home-delivered meals may go up. So just I want to put it out there that these are not necessarily permanent benchmarks. They will be adjusted as appropriate in line with our provider quality management system.
Okay. And our final question, if care managers will not be asking clients these questions, who will and what will their training be? What, apologize, something else popped up. Let me start over. If care managers will not be asking clients these questions, who will and what will their training be? What exact training will they have in working with the elderly, with families, with communication issues, bias, etc.?
These are all great questions, and they're ones we intend to answer through our Sassy development project that's going on this year and through the field testing that Scripps is going to help us do. There would be, I can safely say there would be an intense amount of training involved and reliability testing and so forth. This is not a change we would make lightly.
Okay, and we have one more question that was just submitted. Did you say that no one else can be in the room, including family members, proxies? And if so, what is COA's plan for ousting such individuals and upon what authority? And further, does COA understand that family members may not wish to allow a stranger with the patient to answer questions? How exactly does this bear on there being no bias?
I'm not sure that this really is an issue that comes up in the field very much. I don't know if it's a matter of authority just so much as the Sassy tool is used as a way of talking through the questions with the provider. These are things that the care manager would be discussing with the client and sometimes possibly also with the family during an annual reassessment visit. Well, when it comes time to actually do the Sassy survey, there are scripts that the care manager follows to help them deal with situations, and I would imagine if it comes down to it, if there are any issues, they would probably default to just not doing the survey. I mean, certainly there is our care managers are trained professionals who wear two hats in that visit. They're the care manager, and when it comes time to do the survey, they are the survey administrator or the researcher. And they know how to effectively be in both roles. I have not really heard of there being any conflict on this particular front.
Okay, that was our final question, so our question and answer period has now concluded.
This is Amy Ho again. If you should have any questions after this webinar, please feel free to contact Dr. Straker and Matt at their email addresses that were in the presentation, or contact Amy Ho and Lori Hayes at the Council on Aging.